What's going on, guys? Asian Guy here, bringing you the long-awaited, long-overdue, and highly demanded / requested video. It is going to be the PvP tier list video, and in this video, we are actually going to have around 5 different infographics or 5 different lists, which I'm going to try and blast through. It's most likely going to be a very long video, might even be over 1 hour long, so feel free to watch this video on 2x speed, and hopefully it will still make sense. So, let's get into it. First of all, PvP. The reason why I've been holding off on making these videos is because it will be a lot more straightforward to explain when the mode actually comes out on global, which is, as of recording this video, in 2 days time. I'm recording on the 22nd of September. PvP will be coming out on global on the 24th of September, and it will be immediately available once that maintenance ends. So, there's a lot of misinformation going around as to what are good units to start off with, so please do not fall for the easiest and biggest baits and biggest traps that you can fall for. We're going to be covering everything in this video: starter teams, final teams, best units to invest into, worst units to invest into for both servers of the game. So let's begin. Number 1. Rumble Scrolls. You will have an extremely limited income of PvP Rumble Scrolls to power up your unit. So every single, and I mean literally every single scroll makes a huge difference, whether it's bronze, silver, or gold tier. Every single one makes a huge difference. For those of you who don't know what Rumble Scrolls are, they're going to be the items that you will be using to power up your character's special abilities and their passive abilities in PvP. JP being the test server, that is, we have tried and tested what is good, what is bad for you guys in the name of science, in the name of experimentation. Let me tell you, there's a lot of units that look good on paper that are just terrible in PvP. A lot of them being powerhouse and strength units, we will see in a moment here. But yes, PvP scrolls, they function the same way as turtles do. If you feed a strength or a red turtle to a strength or a red character, you get bonus EXP. However, if you feed a strength or a red turtle into a dex or green character or any non-strength or red character, you're not going to get that bonus EXP. So you really do want to efficiently use your PvP scrolls by color coordinating them properly. Point number 2, understanding what's meta, as Jojo Rage quits the PvP video. Understanding what's meta, bruiser teams. Bruiser teams are teams that have good balance between tankiness, have a good balance between damage, and also basically a good balanced team, but they're not squishy. They cannot be squishy. They gotta be relatively tanky, and they gotta have a steady flow of damage. And bruiser teams consist of a good balance of the HP, defense, and speed stat buffs. One of the biggest traps, which is point 3, is the attack up buff. A lot of people see attack up and they're like, oh my god, this is so good. Attack up is the best thing in the world. Wrong. It's one of the worst stat buffs you can have in the game alongside recovery for PvP, because the name of the game is surviving until you can pop off your specials, and the specials that you want to be running, back to point 2, is going to be a mix of HP cutters, fixed damage, and defense down nukes. And that should be relatively straightforward as to why the attack up buff is not very good, because with attack up, the attack stat does not contribute anything to HP cuts, it does not contribute anything to fixed damage, there's no scaling from the attack stat there. In other words, it's basically irrelevant. The only thing it's relevant for is defense down nukes, but the thing here is with defense down nukes, you reduce your enemy's defense so much that your attack stat won't really matter too much as long as it has a good multiplier, which most of the characters that have defense down nukes already have. So in this instance, attack up really is a trap. If you see someone like V1 Snake Man, or you see Douglas Bullet and you're like, whoa, this unit gives attack up to so many allies on your team, that's a trap. That's not a good thing. You want HP, you want defense, you want speed, you want cooldown reduction, etc, etc, and I'll expand on all of that later on for individual units in the next part of this video. Last but not least, and this is by far actually the most important point here, what matters the most, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please ingrain this because it's very important, is team synergy, not individual units. Team synergy, how your units work together, how they cooperate, how they basically synergize and feed into one another with their passives, with their special abilities. Do they buff each other? Do they not buff each other? Do they debuff the enemies? How do they counter the enemy team? Team synergy is the most important thing in PvP. Therefore, strategy, understanding how to strategize your teams and create your teams to counter enemy teams, is going to be the #1 asset, #1 skill that you can have in PvP. You unfortunately, just like the normal games or the normal game modes in OPTC, you cannot just put strong units or your favorite characters together and hope it works. That never works. It shouldn't work in any gacha game. Although, as you know, we all want that to work, to have your favorite characters in one team, but that's just unfortunately not how meta games work when it comes to PvP. The units need to boost and help each other just like normal team building. There is no one best character and there is no one best team in the game because almost every single PvP unit has a hard counter to them. There are specific PvP units in the game that will debuff certain classes, that will debuff certain types, and just basically hard counter some of your units. Therefore, you would like to normally have multiple different teams to overcome all kinds of different enemies and a whole diverse range of allies for yourself to basically challenge as many different teams as possible. Just like the normal game mode, no one team can clear every single piece of content in the game. You'll always have to make tweaks and adjustments to any and all of your teams. So those are the main points that I want to cover in PvP. The other bonus point, which I will show in the future around the 30th, at the end of the month, I'll have a video showcasing proper PvP gameplay, is that the positioning of your units is actually very important, but that is opening a whole other can of worms of explanation. TLDR, the short version, is the first 3 units in your team, 1, 2, and 3. They are going to be your front line. Essentially, you want to put all your tanks here, or any units that you want to soak up damage depending on their passives. There are some units in the game that the lower HP they are, the stronger they are, so maybe you want to put those kind of units in your first 3 slots. Your last 2 slots for your main team. Every team has 5 slots for the main team that is always active. The last 2 slots you want to put your squishy units, your healers, your DPS units, anyone that can't really take any damage, etc, etc, will go in there, and overall you have 8 slots. 3 slots are your subs bench. However, the main thing you want to be looking at are your 5 main units and how to make them as strong as possible, because if you have a very strong team of 5, you don't really need to worry about your subs bench. So yeah, that is the first part of the video done. Hopefully that wasn't too long. If you did stick around for that section, you are already more knowledgeable than 99.9% of the player base for OPTC PvP. A lot of people don't know this kind of stuff. A lot of people don't understand this kind of stuff. They want to take the shortcut. They don't really want to learn the game, and therefore you will have easy pickings going up against these kind of players. Let's move on. Okay guys, we got the very important part of the video out of the way. I'm going to quickly show you now every single infographic that I've made for you. So if you are being impatient, that's okay. I totally understand. If you want to be impatient, you can just take a screenshot of all of these. But you will obviously be missing out on very important information that I'm going to talk vocally about and not really have written down. But if you do kind of already have an idea how PvP works, you can just look at these infographics and work from your own knowledge. There will be timestamps in the description, and if you have the updated version of YouTube, you should just be able to scroll along the timeline and it will specifically tell you which each timestamp is. So that's a very nice feature YouTube has. But let's quickly get into all of them. So this is going to be PvP Team's global cheat sheet. These are teams that you should be looking to create on the global side of OPTC for the next 1, 2, maybe even 3 months until PvP Whitebeard comes along and completely destroys the matter and changes everything. These are all going to be very strong teams with worthy characters to take on your PvP scrolls, so do keep that in mind. I will expand on each of these teams in a moment, but let's move on to the next one. The next one we are going to be looking at are PvP traps. These are units you do not want to go near. You do not want to invest any of your PvP scrolls into any of these characters because it is a complete waste. If you are being told otherwise, this person has no idea what they're talking about, because all of these characters are a waste of your PvP scrolls. Do not even for a moment think any of these characters are good for investing into. All of these will become outdated, or they're just going to be rubbish straight from the release of PvP. That's the shorthand version of it. PvP investments. These are the best units that you want to be investing in on JP and on global. All of these units you will most likely see in top tier teams for OPTC PvP. Very good units. A lot of these units will take a long time before they even come to global. Most notably PvP Whitebeard. I'm sure you guys have heard many people raving about him if this unit down here in the third row, PvP Whitebeard, it is not Legend Quick Whitebeard, do not get it confused. This is a PvP unit. He only costs 20 when all other legends in the game cost 55. He's not a legend unit. He's a PvP unit. They only cost 20. Very, very overpowered. If you are able to get him on global, guaranteed for 3 multis, no brainer. You pull for that. He's easily worth 150 gems. Easily worth 150 gems. Such a overpowered unit in PvP. He carries me personally, and he carries like 99% of the player base on JP for like the elite players in OPTC PvP. Very, very, very good unit. And then next up, we have got the level 1 teams on global. These are teams that you should not be investing into necessarily, but they will be very good at level 1. They'll be very good for like the first month of PvP on global when everyone has very underpowered teams. You've got all the noobs who have no idea what they're doing, investing into the likes of V1 Snake Man, Big Mum, Douglas Bullet, all these strength units which will become outdated within a month's time. You'll be able to capitalize on all of these kind of people who don't do the early stages of PvP correctly. Let's take a look at PvP Japan's cheat sheets. These are very, very powerful teams that you will see very frequently in like the top 500 players of OPTC PvP Japan. A lot of these teams, a lot of people will just not have maxed out because, as I said earlier, I am a player that's guilty of making a lot of mistakes. I've experimented with a lot of units, therefore I am lacking and I'm severely behind the curve when it comes to PvP scrolls. For the amount of time I've spent on the game and the amount of money I've spent on the game, I am severely behind on PvP scrolls. For example, the number 1 team here, this is not in rank order by the way, but incidentally, the best team that I think is on JP right now is this full 5-man int team. Really, really overpowered, supremely balanced between defense, speed, HP up, and just in general charge time. It's a very disgustingly overpowered team, but as I said, you need to be using your scrolls efficiently. I wasted a lot of my purple scrolls, a lot of my int scrolls, and therefore I do not have this team maxed out. I cannot fully utilize it yet, but at max level, oh my days, this team is so broken. But we will talk about these one by one individually. That is a quick preview of what's to come in the video. Let's head on back over to the traps for PvP, what not to invest into and what to invest into, the best and worst units that you can look at for PvP. I will see you in a moment. Alrighty guys, I'm going to try and make this short and sweet. These are the worst possible PvP units, the legends in terms of legends that you can invest into using your PvP scrolls, your rumble scrolls. Please do not go anywhere near these hot garbage units. Now, it's very easy to be fooled by a lot of these units. You might look at them and be like, they're not that bad on paper. But let me tell you what, PvP is a constantly evolving game. The meta is always changing. But one thing that won't change is that all of these units, or most of these units, either one, have superior counterparts to them. For example, Whitebeard. There are 2 very good Whitebeards in PvP strength, V1 Legend Whitebeard and PvP Whitebeard. Whereas Deadbeard and Whitebeard and Marco, there's no universe you should be using those 2 over the 2 that I just mentioned there. Snake Man, V2 Snake Man, any version of Luffy, they're all inferior to Luffy, Sanji on Japan. For PvP, there again, no universe should you be using those units over Luffy and Sanji. Therefore, those kind of characters are also traps. Number 2 is that they are just have so many hard counters to them. V1 Snake Man, Douglas Bullet, Big Mum are all great examples of units that have super hard counters to them. V3 Katakuri counters powerhouse units, V3 Law counters driven and powerhouse units. You've got PvP Whitebeard, who will be a meta changer, one of the most common units you will come up against. Silences powerhouse units for 24 seconds, basically making them useless. Therefore, V1 Snake Man, these kind of units, V1 Big Mum, you don't want to go anywhere near them because they are so hard countered by so many different units that will be coming in the next coming months, even weeks of global, especially if the units on global come immediately buffed. And let me tell you, it will be completely stupid if they do not come buffed. So I'm 99% sure with the Yoshi era that they are just going to come straight up buffed. So let's get into it. So I'm going to blast through these as quick as possible. V1 Snake Man, outdated, hard countered. There are better versions of Luffy. V2 Snake Man, just too weak. Douglas Bullet, he's okay on a defense team, but on an offensive team, you don't want to do it, and the best defense is a good offense. He's also a unit that if you see, you don't really want to fight at very early stages of PvP. On Japan right now, if I see Douglas Bullet, I always want to fight him because he's an easy W. Anyone using Douglas Bullet, there's a good chance they have no idea what they're doing in PvP. Big Mom, also the same, only a strength dex quick booster, has good AoE damage, but her cooldown is way too high. Her special comes off way too slowly, and overall she's a strength powerhouse, and driven unit is just not good enough. They're super hard countered. She's just super hard countered. Lucci, glass cannon, not good enough. Sabo, Omega low. This Sabo, just useless trash. We have Crocodile, not very good either. Let's move on to the Dex units. We got Zoro. He's not bad, but he's not good. Let me put it that way. He's really not that great. There are better counterparts to this Zoro. For example, Raid Zoro. Raid Quick Zoro is actually a very good counterpart to use. Although in a slasher team, I would not recommend using either of them necessarily. Raid Zoro is mainly there if you don't have any other good slashers to use. But I do personally think Raid Zoro is a far better investment than Legend Zoro. Either one of the Legend Zoros, which is kind of sad for Zoro, but it is what it is. We got Brook. He's a mediocre healer / tank. Not the best unit in the world, not the worst unit in the world, but there are better dex units that you want to invest to for tanky units. For example, V2 Rady is a far superior tank unit to have. And in general, there are better healers like Corazon as well. Kaido, one of the biggest baits at the early stages of Japan's PvP. So many people had a team that had V1 Snake Man, Douglas Bullet, that had Big Mom, and also this Kaido. One of the biggest baits. Powerhouse units, unfortunately, are by far the worst class that you can run on PvP right now if you get the buffed classes on global. On Japan, Powerhouse is by far the worst class, very heavily debuffed by a lot of top tier units in PvP. It is what it is, but it's just how it is. Kaido's OP in the normal game, but in PvP, one of the worst, if not the worst legend to run. He's just very slow activation of abilities, just not good enough. We have Dex Sub, Omega Low Sabo. Alright, let's move on. We got V2 Dofi and Blackbeard. V2 Dofi, he's not bad, but he has a supremely overpowered counterpart in 6+ Dofi. 6+ V1 Dofi, the Int Dofi, which I actually believe is on a rated up banner right now to try and bait you into doing PvP pulls on global, is one of the most overpowered units in PvP on Japan and will be on global. And this is why I'm almost certain these units are going to be guaranteed to have their buffed abilities. Because 6+ Dofi, before he got his buffs on Japan, was crap. He was rubbish, but now he's overpowered. Massive booster for driven, massive booster for slashers. This Dofi only boosts driven units, and I gotta tell you, you want to be running that 6+ Int Dofi on any driven team. Next up, we have Blackbeard. Very mediocre unit. Universal attack booster. You hate to see it. Attack up, guys, is a trap. Don't fall for it. Again, V1 Snake Man, Douglas Bullet. Any unit that gives you attack up stat is most likely going to be a trap, especially if they don't give you any kind of other buffs on top of that attack up buff. Let's move on. Osoba Mask, Lucy, we've got Deadbeard, we've got the V3 Aokiji, or V2, is that V? No, V3 Aokiji, and we've got Zephyr there as well. Apologies, I'm swallowing so much saliva here. But that aside, what I gotta say is these units look decent on paper. People want them to be good, but the reality is they just don't make the cut. They are all hot garbage. They either have too long of a cooldown, they just don't do enough damage, or their passive abilities are just lacking, or on top of that, they just have better counterparts. So Osoba Mask, as I said, in no universe should you be using this unit over, for example, Sanji and Luffy. Sanji and Luffy's passive is superior, better attack up, gives speed up, better universal abilities to basically hit your opponents, guaranteed to hit your opponents. So very much way better than this Osoba Mask. Osoba Mask is good for really nothing. You will only invest in Osoba Mask if you're desperate for a universal attack up unit, but his special ability will hit enemies in a decent range, has a debuff called Miss, which is not very useful at his cooldown because his cooldown is in the 30s. By the time his special goes off, that Miss debuff is most likely going to be irrelevant because your enemy team will already be cycling through their specials. When an enemy uses, or even when you use a special, debuffs will not matter to you unless you're being bound or your special silence. So debuffs like paralysis, debuffs like bleed, debuffs like miss, all of these kind of debuffs are irrelevant when you have your special ability activating. So that is stuff you don't really need to worry about. We've got Lucy, 6+ Sabo here. I gotta say, I made a big mistake investing into this unit. A lot of quick scrolls I gave to this Sabo early on because I thought he would be good, but unfortunately he's not good enough. He has good speed buffs for his passive. That's really about it. His special ability is terrible. The cooldown is not that great. It doesn't really do that much damage. It gives you attack up buff, which is not very useful. And then Kuzan likewise is a speed booster for his passive. Again, that's not too bad, but 6+ V1 Kuzan is a much better alternative. This Kuzan does a decent amount of AoE damage. It's not great. It's not really that much, but it's not bad at all. And he will silence the enemy with the highest attack stat for 6 seconds. But hold it there, it's not even a guaranteed silence, and it's only 6 seconds. The chances are your enemy that has the highest attack stat has already used their special, so you're literally special silencing an enemy for no reason. So for that reason, this V3 Aokiji is terrible. I was on stream yesterday and I showcased the top 100 teams on JP in that moment, and not a single team had this V3 Aokiji. But guess what? Over 50 teams had V1 6+ Aokiji. So Aokiji is another very, very good example of what not to invest into because he has a superior counterpart in PvP. So this Aokiji is a total trap. Do not go in for this Aokiji. Not worth it. I know a lot of people thought he was good just because he was on a PvP banner, but that's not how you should decide things. You should actually look at what the units do, how they synergize with other units on your teams, and this Aokiji really doesn't make the cut. Deadbeard, as I've already talked about, has better versions of Whitebeard. Zephyr, trash. We got Cavendish, astronomically trash. Komurasaki, even more astronomically trash. He's a recovery up buff. Recovery up. Hot Garbage, Nami, trash. Katakuri, unfortunately, not very good. Does very, very, very little damage in a very small area. Heals himself for 25% HP. 25% HP on paper, you might think looks good, but you have units that can 100% you to 0 you in just like that. You get one shot many, many times, so 25% HP is honestly nothing unless you're going for like a Gigantamax HP team, which is just stupid, so please don't do that. V3 Omega Lol Rayleigh, he's not good in the main game, he's not good in PvP, you hate to see it. We've got this Luffy, who I unfortunately invested and tried to experiment with a lot. He looks like a unit that can one-shot any kind of enemy, but as soon as enemies start getting tankier, as soon as enemies start investing PvP scrolls into defense up, into HP up units, then this Luffy becomes completely irrelevant. Not a good unit to invest into. Chopper is a debuff remover, he's a healer, but really high cooldown, and this kind of healing, this kind of debuff removal is very RNG related. If your units are hit with a debuff really early on, this Chopper will not do anything. Even Chopper can be debuffed as well, you hate to see it. And if he uses a special too early on and then the debuffs come immediately after that, you're basically holding a fat L. Again, you hate to see it, so him, unfortunately, not very useful. The way debuffs work in this game is very, very tedious. Then we have Nekomamushi, not good. Sabo, Omega Lol, Sabo, no, we move on, not good. We got V2 Sanji, not good. He's also a big trap. A lot of people look at him and they're like, whoa, big damage numbers. He's unfortunately not very good at all. We have got 6+ Katakuri, another big bait. A lot of people in Japan did invest into this Katakuri. His passive ability relies on knockback, which is RNG. Knockback is not even a good thing to have because it can mess you up completely. What knockback does is essentially it sends your enemies flying in all kinds of directions. You don't want that to happen. You want all your enemies to be clumped up together so all your abilities can hit them at the same time. If your units or your enemy units are separated, this is another big drawback of V1 Snake Man. Is that V1 Snake Man's special ability, while it does an insane amount of, well, I wouldn't say insane, it does a very, very big amount of damage, it only hits in a smallish, mediumish range in front of him. If he only is able to target one enemy with that special, it's very much going to waste. This is why knockback is such a pain in the butt, which is why units like Zoro are not very good, because they rely on knockback, and you really do hate to see that when you have the enemy tank right at the front and then you have all their squishy DPS units really far knocked back, almost off the screen, and you're not going to hit them with any of your special abilities. So Katakuri, unfortunately, not good enough. This Big Mom reduces your allies' defense. One of the worst things you can have in the game is defense down. It's such an obnoxious debuff. It's very, very overpowered to reduce enemies' defenses, but this Big Mom will reduce your allies' defense defense. Skip. Easy skip. We've got this V2 Akainu, who's not the worst unit in the world. He's very good against, I believe, Psy and Quick units, but that's it. If your enemy team doesn't have Psy and Quick units, you're really wasting your time by using him. We've got this V1 Rayleigh. He's not a bad unit, but likewise to Whitebeard has a superior counterpart when V2 6+ Rayleigh comes out. One of the best universal units in the game. Universal booster, universal tank, you love to see it. V2 6+ Dex Rayleigh is superior. You should not be looking at this V1 Rayleigh at all. Zoro, unfortunately lacking, not one of the top tier Sasha units. You hate to see it. Judge is not top 5. Judge is not top 5 as a meme, by the way, but Judge, not very good at all. Doesn't really offer you much in your kit. And then Sengoku, I mean, we know. We already know. He's not good. Luffy Ace, Luffy Law. There's a better Ace unit in Strong World Ace. There's way better Luffy units. Even this Luffy Ace unit as a whole is just very, very bad. Doesn't give you much, doesn't give you a lot of damage, doesn't give you many stats. Not very good at all. Luffy Law is a universal attack up unit, which is okay, but again, universal attack up or even attack up is a bit of a bait. Their special ability has an insanely high cooldown in the 40s, in the mid 40s, I believe it's 45 seconds, which is unfortunately not very, very good. There are way better Law units to be using as well. So again, you hate to see it. Barto and Cavendish, not a terrible unit by any means, but definitely not worthy of taking up your scrolls. The other thing with dual units, by the way, are that dual units are the easiest if they have two different typings or two different colors to power up, because you can feed them two different power up scrolls. So for Dex, Barto and Cavendish, you can feed Dex scrolls or Quick scrolls, or you can feed for Luffy and Law also Dex and Quick, Luffy Ace, Quick and Strength, etc, etc. But Barto Cavendish, driven units, early on, not really going to be looking great. And the best driven units will mostly consist of basically int units. So you don't really want to be looking at those kind of units right now. The other thing with dual units are, or double units are, that they are not boosted by their typings or their colors. So, for example, you have V1 Big Mom who boosts Strength, Dex, and Quick units, and you have Luffy Ace or Barto and Cavendish who are Strength, Dex, and Quick, but none of those units will get boosted because double units or dual units do not count for any kind of type, otherwise that would be just too broken. So the only units that they can be utilized with truly are other class boosting units. So class boosting teams are the best places for them to shine. Vivi and Rebecca only offers you small buffs, really not that great at all. There's also a better Rebecca unit in Viola and Rebecca, very, very, very good free-to-play unit as well. You got Nami and Robin. Nami and Robin, they don't really have other good counterparts. I guess Dex Nami is not bad. You have V1 6+ Robin is not bad at all. But Nami Robin is also not a terrible unit, but very much cerebral teams are okay. You wouldn't really want to use such a defensive unit on a cerebral team, which is one of the bigger downfalls for Nami and Robin. Their kit also is not that great overall. Not bad, but not great by any means. Paralysis removal is again not that useful because special abilities are not basic. They're not hindered by paralysis. You can still use your special abilities even if you're paralyzed, and the paralysis debuff will still be ticking down while you use your special abilities. So overall, paralysis is not the most obnoxious buff in the game. Sanji and Judge, trash. Whitebeard and Marco, we've already talked about them. There's a better Whitebeard unit in the game. You should not be looking at them whatsoever. Those are the PvP traps. Let's move on to the PvP god tier, or the best units to invest in. Moving on, we have got the best units that you can invest your PvP Rumble scrolls into. These are going to be a lot of different units that you have to take a look at, and therefore you have to be very careful with your scrolls. It will be better illustrated once you guys see, and once I talk about the teams that you want to be creating. So let's begin. So the first row we have strength units, second row Dex, etc, etc. Let's begin with strength Whitebeard. This unit is most likely never ever going to be outdated. Yes, he is a strength powerhouse unit, but because his cooldown is so low, it doesn't really matter. He's also a universal booster, and at under 30% HP, he will give himself level 8 defense up, which is pretty obscene, making him very, very tanky and very obnoxious. Most games, you'll get 2, 3, maybe even 4 of his HP cuts off doing 48% HP cut of all enemies' current HP every single time, and he will not miss. He will never miss because he always hits all enemies, which is pretty insane. We've got V1 6+ Akainu. This guy is a game ender. If he survives under the 30-second mark, he will destroy all enemies. He does over 6,000 fixed damage, so he will shred tanks, he will kill everybody because he hits everyone in a large circular range, which is very, very OP. And then the other thing with this V1 Akainu is that he's only really good under 50 or 30 seconds, so you do need to have him surviving until then, or you want to put him on your subs bench, assuming that he will come on later on for one of your own eliminated units. Let's move on to the strength. I was about to say Whitebeard. The Strength Akainu that's going to debut on Global as soon as PvP releases. Really overpowered unit. I expect to see him in so many teams when he comes to Japan. Very, very, very strong unit. Has a bleed. Has permanent defense down in his passive. He basically deals, like, I think 5 times, maybe 10 times. I don't even know. It's going to be some sort of absurd amount of his attack stat to one enemy with the highest recovery, aka the healer, or one of their higher tanks, which is so good. That's so good. Being able to just one-shot an enemy like that is so good, especially one of the obnoxious ones in the back line. And the bleed effect that he has is going to stack up really nicely, and under 30 seconds he's just going to become so obnoxious. Very overpowered PvP unit. I cannot wait for him to come to Japan, and hopefully I will be able to pull him. The only downside of that Akainu is that he is a strength, dex, quick attack booster. Attack up again is kind of mediocre. You don't really want to see that too much. But V1 Whitebeard, V1 Akainu, they're both attack up units. They're mainly there for their specials. Actually, the other thing worth noting is that V1 Whitebeard and V1 Akainu, you want to max their specials. You don't really care about their passives because they're attack up passives. Just like this V3 Akainu as well. You actually just want to power up their specials immediately. The passives take, you know, they're on the back burners. You don't really care about them until later on, and you just want to increase their battle power. But overall, you want to look at their specials first. Inuarashi is actually the same thing. It's a common theme with strength units, because a lot of strength units will unfortunately just be boosting attack up for certain units or certain types or certain classes, and they just have a very powerful New King special. So Inuarashi is also the same. You want to invest in his special ability rather than his passive ability. His passive is not bad. It's a cerebral speed boost, which is very nice, and also under 60% HP will give himself a significant attack up buff. But his special is a large AoE nuke, very good, and he's a slash unit, so he goes on a lot of different teams. Cerebrals and slashers, both very good classes to run in PvP, so this Inu is a very good investment. He's also very good at level 1. Whitebeard is also very good at level 1. But the two Akainus are not very good at level 1. They power spike at level 10 special. You need to have them at level 10 special to unleash the most potential from them. Otherwise, they're really going to be sitting on your kind of bench, just sitting there really offering not much. We have got the Sweet Commanders, also one of those units. Actually, they do give HP up. They give attack up as well to strength units. So they have one of the stronger passives in the game for strength units, but again, their special is very good AoE damage. You want to invest in their special first, but their passive is also worth investing into. We've got Jack. Now, Jack is a very good tank unit. I would say, though, this Jack is only worth investing into if you plan on making a fighter team. If you plan on making a fighter team which consists of Jinbei, PvP Whitebeard, Sanji and Luffy, Otama, etc., this Jack is definitely lower on the priority of investing your units into, or investing your PvP scrolls into. He's a HP cutter. He gives defense up and HP up as a passive, which is very nice. Otama, Kaku, and Sanji. All of these units are PvP units. They will come at 20 cost and they will stay at 20 cost. Legends, on the other hand, are 55 cost. So you can fit 2 PvP rare recruits in for the price of 1 legend, which is something you really want to consider, because you can have a team of 5 legends and 3 PvP units, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, you can, which is the perfect balance. So, Otama. I've been chasing her. I've been trying to unlock her, trying to get her, but I've been unlucky, unfortunately. Haven't been able to pull her, so I cannot complete her teams. She is so good for free spirit and fighter units. She is a short turn, obnoxiously short turn cooldown for healing, very good healing as well, significant amount. And on top of that, she will give crit rate up, which is one of the essential ingredients for free spirit teams. Free spirit teams rely heavily on crit. Otama gives a massive crit buff at the beginning or throughout the match, which is very, very good. And for the first 30 seconds, she will also reduce the cooldown of fighter and free spirit units by level 5. So good! So good, because there are some very, very good fighter units in the game. I'm looking at PvP Whitebeard here and Sanji and Luffy, both fighter units, which are, oh, I really wish I had this Otama. I don't have her, and I think she is going to come out on the same banner that Akainu comes out on. If I'm not mistaken, it will most likely be Akainu, Otama, Jozu, and Nekomamushi, all of which are top tier PvP units. So when that banner comes out on Global, if you do care about PvP, it is a super banner to pull for. We've got Kaku, who is a new PvP unit. He came out last month, I think. I did pull him recently, and I have to say he's very good. Very good stashing unit, very short turn cooldown for a nuke of 2 times his attack. I think even 2.2 times his attack, which is very nice. And he will also debuff Dex units. So he specifically hard counters Dex enemies. So one of those obnoxious units that you want to look out for and make sure you keep your eye open for, because if you are running V2 Rayleigh, he's going to have a hard time against this Kaku. We've got Strength Sanji, a very good PvP unit for strength teams, but that's pretty much it. He supplements strength teams. Let's move on to the Dex row. So Dex units, we have got V2 6+ Rayleigh, we have 6+ Corazon, we have 6+ V1 Ace, we have got the Kung Fu Luffy, who I've put in there as a meme, but I'm very confident he's going to be very good on Global, because meme units like Buggy are also very good on JP, so I expect Kung Fu Luffy to be very good. We've got Super Type Kid, and we've got Raid Mihawk, believe it or not, the best Mihawk that you can run in PvP. So Dex Rayleigh, I want to talk about this guy quite a lot. He is a rainbow unit. You will see him basically in half of the top 500 teams on JP, because he is the universal, the premium. My camera's a little bit dark here, let me turn that up. He is the premium universal tank for JP. He will give level 5 HP up to every single unit in the game. He will give them a level 5 or level 6 defense up and level 6 guard rate up. Guard rate is the equivalent of defense up, but for fixed damage and HP cuts, so they will reduce fixed damage and HP cuts, and also the chance of getting crit, also the chance of your enemies even hitting you. That's what guard rate is up for. But Rayleigh will give all of that under 60% HP. He will give those obnoxious defensive buffs to enemies or your allies if you have him. So he is basically on so many teams that you will see on Japan. Very overpowered unit. I love that they have brought him back with a 6+. The 6+ has a different ability to the 6-star version, so you do need to super evolve the Rayleigh. His unevolved version is not good. Not good at all, guys. Significantly less damage, significantly lower buffs, and you really do need to have that V2 Rayleigh super evolved into 6+ V2 Rayleigh to benefit from all his glorious buffs that he did gain. Moving on, we have got 6+ Corazon. Actually, I should mention, the other thing with V2 6+ Rayleigh is that his special will deal 1700 fixed damage in a large radius, which is very good. And on top of that, will give attack and defense up buffs to your allies for a long time, which is very good. Combining with Shanks' crew, most of the time you're going to have like a level 14 going up to like a level 18 defense up, which is pretty insane. Your units will be virtually unkillable from normal attacks or any attacks that scale off defense, or rather attack stat. So yes, you do want to combine this V2 Rayleigh with Shanks' crew most of the time. Let's move on to Corazon. So Corazon, let me take a drink of water here. I'm a bit dehydrated, apologies. But Corazon has been buffed superbly. He hard counters enemy quick units. He debuffs them by making them slower to reach their abilities, their ability to attack you. So Corazon, very good. He will give you, as long as he's above 70% HP, a large attack up buff to all your allies. So he's a rainbow unit, and also his healing is pretty good. It's a medium range heal, and a smaller circle around him, he will give level 7 defense up. Level 7 is again pretty obscene. That will virtually make you unkillable for any attacks that scale off the attack stat. Now a unit that does scale off the attack stat, but will hit everyone for a large amount. A big nuker, it's going to be 6+ V1 Ace. He will buff the speed of Free Spirit and shooter units. He will buff his own attack by something like level 10, which is crazy. That's really, really good. It might be like level 7, level 8, which is still really, really good. And to top it off, he has a very short cooldown. He has decent speed. And he will hit all enemies just like Whitebeard V1. He will not miss. He will hit everyone no matter where they are, no matter how far they're scattered on the map. He will hit them for 2 times his attack. Yes, he will cut his own HP, but that doesn't matter. He's just there to be a cannon and completely obliterate HPs across the board. Very, very, very good nuke. And because he now boosts Free Spirit and shooter units, 2 very powerful classes in PvP, he is just a fantastic unit to have on a lot of different teams. Kung Fu Luffy, I don't know what he does yet. That's a bit of a meme. So yeah, we'll see about Kung Fu Luffy. And then we have Super Type Kid. Very good for Dex units, very tanky. He gives HP up, he gives defense up to your Dex allies, and he has a good AoE damage dealing special. And with that AoE damage dealing special, he will also give a further level 3 defense up to your Dex allies, which is pretty overpowered. Again, one of those units, a good bruiser. He's very tanky, he's very hard to kill, and he will make your allies virtually unkillable, but also dealing a good amount of damage as damage output. We've got V1 Mihawk. If you do not have V1 Whitebeard, you are missing out on the best HP cutter in the game. One of the second best or third best HP cutters in the game is going to be this V1 Mihawk. He hits enemies in a large frontal range for up to, I think, 43% HP cut at max level. Very, very good. That's pretty much all he's good for. He has a very short cooldown as well, so he will keep spamming that HP cut, which is very nice as well. 43% HP cut of enemies' current HP is no joke, guys. That is a lot. Whitebeard is 48%. But Mihawk, he's free. He's only 30 cost because he's not a legend unit. And he's very easy to farm, very easy to max limit break. I do recommend people investing in him even at level 1, which is what I'm using him at on Japan right now for my Slasher team. Very, very, very effective, especially because he's low defense. You can use him for 1 HP cut. Hopefully he dies. You bring in another powerful sub. For me, when my Mihawk dies, I bring in that Strength Kaku above him, which is very, very nice. It's a very nice combination. Let's move on to what I personally believe to be the best unit to own. Not necessarily the best unit in the game for PvP, but the best unit to own in PvP, because he will unlock so many teams for you. Fighter Striker, PvP, 20 cost, Whitebeard. I don't really know what to say other than he's overpowered. So, his passive ability will give level 5 HP up to all quick allies, which is, you know, not the biggest deal in the world. If you're running a full quick team, it is a big deal because you're going to make your quick allies very tanky. But the main thing to take away from this is that for the first 50 seconds, he will give level 5 HP up to himself, which keeps him alive, which makes him more survivable. And as long as he gets his specials off, oh my goodness, the enemies are in for a world of pain. And after 50 seconds have gone by, he will change his buff from level 5 HP up, which is fine, because by that point, there's a good chance that level 5 HP up, that extra HP you're getting from that passive, has already been depleted by the enemy, so it doesn't matter if that suddenly disappears from his passive. His passive will change to level 5 speed up, level 5 attack up. It might actually be more than, I think it's level 10 attack up. It might be level 10 attack up. I don't know, guys. I can't remember. I just know it's broken. And he also reduces his cooldowns, which is, oh my god, he's so disgusting. Under 50 seconds, he goes God mode. Super obnoxious. You slap defense up on him with like V2 Rayleigh, Shanks Crew, or Neko Mamashi, PvP unit, and oh my goodness, you are in for a very, very broken unit. So his special, let's move away from his passive. So TLDR, in simple terms, he gives himself a tanky HP buff at the start. Halfway through the battle, he will then turn into God mode, speed unit, damage unit, charge time unit. Very, very good unit, and his special is so busted. He will reduce all enemies' defense by level 5. So this debuff will apply to every single enemy wherever they are. It will not miss. And then in a medium range in front of him, he will deal 2 times his attack. So he will apply the defense down first, and then he will deal 2 times his attack. His attack stat is really good, by the way. His speed stat is really good as well. And then he will annihilate your enemies, really. So he can one-shot a lot of weak enemies. And if you do stack up defense down on your enemies and you buff his attack up somewhat, he will one-shot a lot of enemies. Under 30 seconds, there is no unit in the game he will not one-shot. Very, very, very broken unit. I try and avoid him as much as possible in PvP because he's so obnoxious to fight. Let's move on away from the top 1 unit into one of the top, I guess this is a top 5 unit as well, Tesoro. One of the most commonly used units in the game. Tesoro will give you level 1 defense up, which is not much, but every piece of defense up buff is really nice to have. It's a very, very powerful buff. Tesoro will give you level 1 defense up to all units, and on top of that, he will reduce the charge time or cooldown. I wanted to say cooldown. He will reduce the cooldowns of all your allies by a significant amount. So, I think you guys know, the quicker you get your specials off, the more likely you're going to win. So Tesoro, on that note, very, very good. And to top it off, guess what? He has 2 overpowered mechanics in his special. He has fixed damage, which is a small amount. It's not even 2,000, but I think it's like 1,700 fixed damage. Might even be less than that, but it's pretty good. And then in a small radius around him, he will give a massive defense up buff, I think level 7. And that's pretty much what you want to see. Cooldown reduction, defense up, fixed damage, very, very, very good unit. That's why you will see a lot of Tesoro in PvP on both Global and on JP. We've got Carrot. Carrot gives speed up to all the classes she boosts normally. So Fighter, Slasher, Striker, Shooter, and Cerebral. And on top of that, she will give herself an attack up buff, which is not bad. But she herself does not scale up from attack up buff. So therefore, it's a little bit redundant unless you're focusing on her normal attacks. But her special ability will give charge time. So she will instantly fill the gorge by 20% for all the classes I just mentioned. Fighter, Slasher, Striker, Shooter, and Cerebral units by 20%. And then on top of that, deal 2,450 fixed damage in a large frontal range. Very, very, very good unit. The only drawback for this Carrot is that her cooldown is relatively high. Frankie, very, very tanky unit. He's a HP cutter, he gives defense up, and he also has a massive HP up passive ability. His special ability gives you defense up and will also do a massive HP cut. Well, it's not massive, but in a large frontal range, so it will hit a lot of enemies for, I believe, 21%-ish damage, which is very, very good. One of the premium tanks in the game. He will be tanky for, and he will give his buffs for Slasher, Fighter, Striker, and Shooter units. Very similar to Carrot there, but all the primary classes. Let's look at V2 6+ Lucci. Camera is now getting very bright because the sun has come outside. It's very, very hot here. Apologies, guys. But 6+ V2 Lucci is the closest thing you'll get to PvP Whitebeard. He too will also reduce the enemy's defense first and then nuke them. His defense down is even higher than Whitebeard's. Whitebeard's is level 5 defense down. This Lucci's is level 7. However, I don't think that defense down hits all enemies, and it will only hit a medium range in front of him. But whoever he hits, this Lucci has a good chance of one-shotting because he will deal 1.5 times the attack. He has a very good attack stat, and then that defense down of level 7 is a lot of defense down. He is a very fast unit as well, so his normal attacks will come through fast, and he will also boost the speed of shooter units. So a very, very good shooter unit. Very good unit overall. I would slap him on many different teams if I didn't have PvP Whitebeard, so I do recommend getting him. And then we have got one of the most used units in PvP on Japan, V1 6+ Aokiji. Now his passive is terrible. It's basically non-existent. I think every time he crits, it's either every time he crits or every time he knocks a unit back, he will give himself attack up. But his special ability doesn't even scale off attack up. It's a fixed damage special, so his attack stat doesn't really matter. In a large range, his special damage will be 2,500 fixed damage, and he has an 80% chance to bind all enemies by 5 seconds, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that can really be a game changer. It can be the difference between your enemies doing a powerful normal attack or a special attack that can kill one of your allies. And what will happen here is, if you do bind your enemies, you'll have plenty of time for your units to start attacking them and hopefully eliminate one of them before they can do anything. So this Aokiji is a very, very good RNG unit. However, because he's an RNG unit, it can completely backfire. You might not bind anybody, out of 5 enemies. You can bind maybe just 1 person, maybe 2 people who are not that useful to the enemy team in that very moment after you activate his special, in which case you might be kicking yourself. I personally don't think this Aokiji is that great. I think he's decent, but his passive doesn't offer anything to your team, and in general I think the fixed damage is very nice. The bind debuff is too RNG for my liking, so I don't personally use this Aokiji that much. But every now and then, against very, very tanky teams, I may go in on this Aokiji because he has a large fixed damage. We've got Raid Bellamy. Raid Bellamy is a bit of a hidden gem, just like Raid Mihawk. A lot of people don't know what he does on JP. Raid Bellamy is good for int-driven teams, believe it or not, because the best driven teams on JP are basically full int teams plus this Bellamy. So Bellamy, he is a glass cannon unit. He will increase the HP of all driven units by, I believe, level 5, which is fantastic. But he will reduce his own defense by level 2, which is a bit of an L. That's not good. But the good thing about this Bellamy, there's a lot of buts with Bellamy, is that his special is on a very low cooldown. He has a very high speed, meaning he will be able to get off his special multiple times. His cooldown is low, his speed is low, so he will have many rotations to activate his abilities or his normal attacks. And this Bellamy has an AoE level 4 defense down reduction and HP cut, which is very good in combination with the super type Blackbeard, because what that will do is set up your Blackbeard, who has a very short cooldown as well, to deal a huge amount of damage to the enemy. So very, very good consecutive usage of defense down. A very hidden gem of a unit, if I say so myself. We have got Nekomamashi, who is going to be a Pirate Rumble unit. A PvP unit, costs 20, which is very nice. Bellamy costs 30 because it's a raid unit. But this Nekomamashi is going to give your allies that are Cerebral and Striker units very good classes. Level 6 defense up. Very tanky. It might be level 5, but level 5, level 6, really powerful defense up for the first 50-ish or first 40-ish seconds of the battle. And then after that, I think he gives them speed up. Either way, very good unit. Very big HP cut, 30%. And that HP cut also comes with attack up and defense up for your allies. So very good unit. Let's move on to Sai. This part is taking a long time, guys. I actually feel a shortness of breath, which is a bit scary. But apologies it's taking this long, but I do want to explain what all of these units do. Kizaru, one of the best units you can invest into for PvP early on. And I think right now a lot of people have realized, myself included on JP, how good this unit is. He is going to give you a speed buff for his passive and cooldown reduction. 2 very good buffs to have for slashers and also shooters, who have some of the best damage units in the game. And he has a very high speed, so he will constantly go through his attack cycle very quickly, and his special cycle very quickly because he has a very low cooldown. He has a large AoE attack, which doesn't hit for much, but it adds up because he constantly does it over and over again. You can get it off like 5, 6, maybe even 7 times in one PvP battle, depending on how many units are left on the field. But very obnoxious unit. And on top of that, he gives an attack up buff, which is nice for slashers and also nice for shooters, because a lot of those shooter and slasher units actually do scale up off the attack stat. So they scale off, not scale up. Scale off the attack stat. V3 Law, very popular unit for, I think on global is going to be a very popular unit. On Japan, he has kind of seen less play now that we have V3 Katakuri, who does something very similar to him. But V3 Law, I think, very good. He is a hard counter to driven and powerhouse units. So he will, at the start of the battle for I believe 40 seconds, debuff any and all enemies that are driven or powerhouse units. He will reduce their speed, he will reduce their cooldown, and he will also reduce their guard rate up, which is really good. He will basically essentially slow all enemies that are driven and powerhouse, making them somewhat redundant. You're most likely going to kill them before they can get their specials off, which is very nice. And he will also reduce the cooldown of all Sai units, so he pairs up very nicely with Kizaru, because Kizaru is slasher, Law is slasher, and they're both Sai units, and they will both reduce each other's cooldowns. But this Law, even if you put him on the team by himself, he will reduce his own cooldown, and his special is an AoE 2200 fixed damage, which is very good. I really like big AoE fixed damage specials, if you guys didn't notice. We have another unit that is a big AoE fixed damage dealer, and this unit will not actually miss because it will target 3 enemies specifically for, I believe, 2,500 fixed damage. It is the German 66 crew. They're a very, very good unit for side teams as well. I can't really say much other than that. They do a lot of stuff for side teams, and mono side teams are a bit hard to come by because a lot of people just don't have the side scrolls invested into a mono side team. Same thing for V3 Boa. V3 Boa will give defensive buffs and also attack buffs for side teams, and her special ability, 4,000 fixed damage to the enemy with the lowest HP, which can be a good thing. It can also be a very bad thing if your enemy has a lot of bait units in there, a lot of units to be sacrificed, then that will take the hit from the V3 Boa, which you don't want. You want the V3 Boa to eliminate a useful unit who is on low HP, but she is one of those execution units in the game. And on top of that, she will give like a level 10 plus attack down to a large range of enemies, which is pretty obscene. But again, the attack stat, as I have mentioned, guys, is probably not the least useful stat you'll see used in the game outside of recovery, so do keep that in mind. Pika, another hidden gem, is a raid unit that will give you HP up and defense up buffs for your driven and powerhouse units. Very, very nice to use at level 1 as well. And then his special ability will be very similar to Douglas Bullet. It will force enemies to target him, and he will also give himself guard rate up, which is very good for any unit that wants to be targeted. And he will also do a HP cut, so very, very good unit. Only 30 cost as well. Calgara and Noland, who I was lucky enough to pull. They are a single target nuker that will constantly use their specials over and over and over and over again, basically non-stop, and they can one-shot so many enemies very, very quickly. I do recommend pulling for this unit when they come out, Calgara and Noland. I will never fight an enemy that has Calgara and Noland in their starting team or even in their subs bench, because they are RNG depending on who they hit. So if they hit a tank, that's not good. Obviously, that's not good. You want them to hit a squishy enemy, but because of that, a lot of problems can arise. So yeah, Calgara and Noland, when they come out on their banner, they are going to be fully maxed out, which is why I recommend you try and pull for them. I unfortunately didn't get them on their banner, so I actually have to feed PvP scrolls to max them out, which is a bit unfortunate because they are going to take a decent amount of scrolls to max out, but it's going to be worth it. They are an RNG unit, just like Aokiji, so they're one of those units that I do want to stay away from personally using too much or relying on too much, and also challenging. So yes, big deterrent for me. We have row 5, the best typing in the game. It's going to be int units. The first 4 units you see there for the PvP units, these are like the best 4 units that you can put combined together because the synergy is completely unreal. They're all driven units. Dofi 6+ is one of the best units in the game, full stop. He is a driven and slasher unit, and he will give, listen to this, okay, listen to this, HP up, level 6 HP up for driven and slasher units, level 3 defense up for the first, I think for the first 30 or first 40 seconds, Dofi will give that level 3 defense up, making your unit so tanky. All your slasher, all your driven units, so tanky. And his special ability, oh no. He is guaranteed to hit 3 enemies for 2 times his attack. This Dofi has a good attack stat. He has very good base stats. And on top of that, he will follow it up with giving like a level 4, level 5, level 6. I don't even remember, guys. He gives a very disgusting defense up buff on his special. It's a low cooldown. I basically never fight this Dofi. He's disgusting. This Dofi and Kizaru combined together, disgusting. This Dofi and any of those 3 int units after that combined together, disgusting. Right, let's talk about the V3 Katakuri, one of the units that I think you can slap on any team and he'll be very, very good. This V3 Katakuri will debuff Psy units, reduce their defense, which is a very, very good passive, and he will also increase the speed of int allies. So very, very nice combination there with the int allies that I've just mentioned there. And on top of that, he has fixed damage, just like V3 Law, which is why I think V3 Law has fallen off a little bit. They do the exact same amount of fixed damage, 2,200, but this Katakuri has a shorter cooldown. And on top of that, this Katakuri will not miss because he will hit every single enemy wherever they are on the map for 2200 fixed damage, whereas V3 Law is only in a large radius around him, so he can occasionally miss a lot of enemies. Whereas V3 Katakuri will hit every single one of them, and on top of that, he will reduce the speed of Powerhouse and Free Spirit and Cerebral units, as well as their charge time as well. So he will he will increase their cooldowns, and he will also increase or decrease rather their speed. So very, very good debuffs coming through from that V3 Katakuri, one of the top tier units in PvP. And then we have V3 or V2, apologies, V2 Super Type Blackbeard. V2 Super Type Blackbeard is also driven. V3 Katakuri is driven, so pairs up very, very nicely with the Dofi. This V2 Blackbeard will give HP up buff to your allies that are in, which is very nice. When he's under 60% HP, he will increase his charge time level, meaning that his cooldown, his special, will come up even faster. His special ability in a medium range around him will deal 2 times his attack, will give him attack up buff, and will also reduce his cooldown, meaning you'll go through hopefully an infinite cycle of this Blackbeard using his special over and over and over and over again. And he has one of the highest attack stats in the game. He's very, 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 very good for nuking down enemies consistently. His consistent damage output, which is what you love to see. Now, my game has finally loaded so I can read out to you guys Enel's ability accurately, and I want to read out accurately because it's probably the most broken ability in the game. He's just a normal rare recruit, this Enel, but his passive ability is what makes int teams so broken. So, this Enel, when your team has less than 6 units, and I said this very early on in the video, what you should be looking at are only on 5 main units, and therefore you can run a team of int units with just six int characters. You can have 5 int characters as your 5 main units, and then you can put either like a Raid Bellamy, a PvP Whitebeard, or like a Buggy, or another int unit on the subs bench. But that will total to, when you have 6 allies, 6 or less allies on your team, this is a Enel's passive. All int allies will receive level 5 HP up, level 5 speed up, and level 3 defense up. Combine this with that 6+ Dofi, you have some of the most disgusting astronomical defense up buffs, speed buffs, HP buffs for your int team. And he's driven. It's so gross. His base stats, other than his speed, are all very good as well for a rare recruit, which is why this Enel, you gotta get him if you want to run your PvP int team. Very, very, very good unit. His special ability is also very good. In a large range, deals 1.8 times his attack. He will give his entire allies, all of his allies, level 5 defense up, and will also give them level 5 guard rate up. Really, really good. Low cooldown at 25 seconds as well. Very, very, very good unit. Let's move on to Buggy. Buggy is a universal speed booster. He will increase crew's attack, or rather his own attack, sorry. He will increase his own attack by stages of level 2s, I think, or level 4s, every time he crits. That part is a little bit irrelevant unless you're using a V1 6+ Boa as an ally. But this Buggy will also increase the attack and speed up with his special of all allies as well. So he's actually a rainbow unit, not necessarily just a driven int unit. But because he's driven an int, he works perfectly well with those other 4 int units I've mentioned there. Let's talk about Jozu first before we look at Jinbei, because this Jozu fits perfectly with those int units as well. The one downside of that Jozu is that he's not driven. So he doesn't get the buffs from the 6+ Dofi, any of those buffs. He misses out on all of them. But this Jozu will give defense and will give speed to your int allies, making them essentially unkillable. It will mean that Blackbeard has many rotations of his attack when his attack stat is super high as well, because that Blackbeard buffs his own attack, and in general means all your units will be able to get their cooldowns off relatively quickly. Because how rotations work, oh, that's another, do I really want to talk about how rotations work? In other words, if you want your specials to activate quickly, you want to have low cooldown, but even if they hit max special cooldown, they might just be sitting there waiting. If they're a slow unit, they're going to be sitting there waiting to have their turn in the attack rotation. Therefore, you want them to have a lot of speed. And this is what you're going to get from the Jozu, from the Katakuri. A lot of speed, a lot of defense, a lot of HP. And then the Blackbeard, who's the only unit who really needs to have attack up, is going to get that attack up from himself. So you love to see it. Jozu is a PvP unit. Most likely going to come out with Nekomamushi and Otama and the Akainu on global. At the same time, if you want to pull, you should be pulling for that Jozu as well for the int team. Very, very good. He also does fixed damage in his special, 2,200 fixed damage, which is very, very good. And I think actually his special gives defense up as well. Let's double check that. It might be, no, it actually gives crit up. So that is not that great. The crit up is not great, but actually, yes, it does give level 5 defense up. Very, very, very good special for your int allies. Let's look at Jinbei. Jinbei has one of the best passives in the game and also one of the best specials in the game, but there are not that many good fighter units right now. There's literally like 5, which if you can build that team, which is what I was talking about with Jack earlier, if you do have Jack, Otama, Jinbei, Sanji, and Luffy, and PvP Whitebeard, that is a top tier team that you can build. But this Jinbei will give HP up and defense up in his passive. Very, very, very good. Very big HP, very good defense, very tanky unit, and he gives that to all fighter allies. And then on top of that, his special ability, in everyone that he hits, he will give them level 15 attack down. So they're literally not going to do any damage to you at all. They're just going to tickle you if they have specials that scale off their attack stat. But again, that's not good against HP cuts. That's not very useful against fixed damage. But if they are scaling off their attack stat, level 15 attack down is quite obnoxious for 25 seconds as well. So Jinbei, top tier unit, especially for a defensive team. Last but not least, we have got the dual units, Marco and Ace. Now, Marco and Ace are a bit of an exception here because I don't really recommend people go for free spirit crit teams anymore. They are kind of out of meta now. They are very RNG heavy because you need to crit to get your attack up levels there. The way Marco and Ace works is every time they crit, they will give all allies, including themselves, level 5 attack up. It might be level 6. Let me just double check that. Maruko and do Ace. They will give themselves and all allies level 6 attack up. Now, if you are running a full free spirit crit team, they will get there very quickly because they have 214 attack speed, meaning they will rotate through their attack rotation super fast. And the attack rotation is amazing. It goes from normal attack, which is the weakest normal attack you can do, a full out attack, which deals the highest amount of damage for a normal attack, then a powerful attack, back into a full out attack. So if they crit, they are going to essentially deal like 50, 60, 70% of an enemy's HP. And if they're squishy, they will 100% one-shot them using normal attacks. So this this Marco and Ace, you need to max their passive out immediately. They are a Kizuna unit, therefore it's very easy to max out their passive because they don't take up as much EXP as a Legend unit, which I completely forgot to mention early on, guys, is that Legend units take up way more PvP EXP than all other units. So yes, this this Marco and Ace unit, very, very, very good. Their special ability is one big drawback, is that they're going to cut their own HP by 80%, which I think is stupid. But they do cut their own HP by 80%, and in a frontal medium range deal 1.55 times the attack, which is okay. And then on top of that, give level 4 attack down to enemies, which is pretty good. But overall, Marco and Ace, unless you're going for a free spirit crit team, there is no need to invest into this unit. But early meta PvP for global, top tier unit. Let's move on to Sanji and Luffy. One of the best units in PvP. Sanji and Luffy will give level 6 attack up. I know I did say attack up is not great, but hear me out here. Level 6 attack up and level 3 speed up. This combination, very, very good. Sanji and Luffy has a very high attack stat. They have very high speed. They have very good base stats. Surprise, surprise. They're the best legend in the game after all. And then on top of that, they will target enemies with the highest HP, which is very nice for taking out units like healers or squishy units in the backline, which will not take much damage early on. And then their special, one of the best specials in the game. At level 10, it's a 32 cooldown, which is not bad at all because they are very, very fast at 210 speed. They will deal 3.5 times their attack. 3.5. We're talking before, guys. Strong World Ace, Inuarashi, We're looking at PvP Whitebeard. We're looking at Dofi 6+. They deal 2 times their attack and they're already good nukers. 2 times their attack. This Sanji and Luffy will deal 3.5 times their attack stat, and they are guaranteed to hit 2 enemies. It's going to be 2 random enemies, but any enemy that takes that is not going to be having a good time. Even tanks, this is so good for shredding tanks. Very, very good. And then on top of that, they will give the entire crew a level 5 attack up for 20 seconds and level 7 speed up for 20 seconds as well. This combines so well with PvP Whitebeard. It is a disgusting combination, and I cannot stress how good Sanji and Luffy are. They are by far the best legend in OPTC, in PvP, in the general game mode. They're just combined by far in a different universe, even compared to Shanks' crew. If we're looking at the entirety of the game itself, Sanji and Luffy are just in a different level to all other units in the game. Viola and Rebecca. Viola and Rebecca are a bit outdated now, but in the first 1 and 2 months of global PvP, I think they're going to be very, very good. They're very much like Tesoro. They will reduce the cooldown of all allies significantly, but only for the first 30 seconds of the battle. However, their special ability is also very nice. Low cooldown will give AoE healing, a good amount of healing, over 2000 HP to all your allies. And also, if the battle is over 50 seconds still, or rather if you have over 50 seconds left, so if the battle is under 50 seconds bypassed or has gone by, they will also give level 5 attack up to all allies, which is very, very good. Or allies in a large range. So yes, they are very, very good for cooldown reduction teams that want to get their specials off early on. And last but definitely not least, the second best legend in the game, Shanks' crew. They are one of the tankiest units in the game. They have a fantastic base stats, but their passive ability is completely useless for the first 30 seconds of the battle, which is their one massive drawback. But after 30 seconds of being on the field, or rather after 30 seconds in the battle, if they come on as a sub, it will activate immediately. As long as the countdown in the battle is 70 seconds or less, they will give the entire crew level 5 defense up and themselves level 3 attack up. The level 3 attack up is completely irrelevant because they're a HP cutter, but level 5 defense up is amazing, and their special is a low cooldown at 24. In a medium range, they will cut enemies HP by 21%, which is decent, but the main thing here is that they give their allies level 4 defense up. So in total, from their passive and special, level 9 defense up, rainbow level 9 defense up. Very, very good unit to make your teams very tanky. And those are the best units. This is the list of best units that I can think of. I did stutter a fair amount. Apologies, guys. I'm trying to do this in one take, but my chest is beginning to hurt, so we're going to have to bring this video or this segment to a close and move on to the next part. But Shanks' crew is the last unit we look at there. These are the best units to invest into. Use your scrolls wisely on these units. I will show you guys now global teams that you can use on day one, global teams you should be looking to finish off with, and JP teams which are, you know, 5-6 months ahead of global right now to look out for as well. Let's move on to that. Alrighty guys, these are going to be the global teams that you should be aiming to build when these units come out, or when you can invest in these units, or when you can power these units up with your PvP scrolls. I want to make this as short and sweet as possible, so I'm not really going to explain what every single team does, what each individual unit does. I have already explained that in the previous section for all the good units. Just overall, trust me on this, these units will synergize together. When the abilities come out on global, you'll be able to read them for yourselves and understand how they synergize together. So the first thing that's very important is your first 3 units on your team are going to be your tank units. They're going to be the units that are going to take the most beatings from your enemies, because most units in the game will target enemies that are closest to them, and the closest to them units are going to be obviously the units who are at the front row of your team, which are going to be the first 3 units in every team. Therefore, the positioning in every single team here does make a difference, so you should identically copy them if you can build these teams. Potential replacements are not substitutions, guys. They're not units that you're going to have on your subs bench when doing PvP, because you can fit 8 units into your team. Potential replacements are literally 1-for-1 replacements. So for example, in the first team, if you don't have Lucci, then maybe you can use, instead of Lucci, you can use Usopp or you can use Kuzan. Naturally, you can't replace specific units here. For example, Frankie and The Kizaru is irreplaceable on that team. You do need to have those 2 units to give you that cooldown and sustainability. Those cannot be direct replacements for the 2 DPS units there. I guess I'll go over each of those in detail for every single team. So for the second team, we have a slasher team. The first team is a shooter team. Very, very, very powerful. The second team is a slasher team. Both of these teams, even on Japan right now, would be relevant. So I do recommend going for these teams, both of these teams, because they will last you a very long time. And a lot of the units here will fit on a load of different teams as well. But the second team, we have slashers, made tanky by 6+ Dofi, made tanky by Shank's crew. And then we have 3 DPS units there. And then the 2 DPS units on the bench can be used to replace either Mihawk and Kara as well. Kizaru, again, cannot really be replaced. He's very essential to all of these slasher teams. Row number 3, we have got a striker kind of shooter hybrid team going on here. This is basically a rainbow team because all of these units basically boost fighter, slasher, striker, and shooters. And then Carrot will boost cerebrals as well. But all of these units are strikers or slashers or shooters. So everyone really gets the boost here. So Whitebeard, he is quite tanky. He also activates more tankiness when he's under 30% HP. He's there for the HP cut. You've got tankiness coming through from Frankie and Tesoro. And then you have 2 fixed damage dealers, which should pair up very nicely with the HP cut of Whitebeard. Because after you've cut the enemy's HP by like 40%, then the basically 5,000 fixed damage coming through from those 2 at the end there, Kara and Kuzan, should basically eliminate anyone. And then on top of that, you have the subs bench, which is 6+ Akainu. You have Viola and Rebecca, which can replace Tesoro. 6+ Akainu can replace Kuzan or Kara. And then we also have Neko Mamashi, who can be used to replace like Frankie or even Tesoro, or even any of the quick units on that team. We've got the Free Spirit Crit team. There are really not that many replacements for this team, guys. You do need to have these very specific units, which is why I can't personally use the Free Spirit Crit team, because I don't have Luffy and Zoro. You need to have Luffy, Zoro. You need to have Sabo, Koala. You need to have... You don't actually need to have this Boa Hancock. You can replace Boa Hancock with Bello Betty. I actually think Bello Betty is better used instead of Boa Hancock here, as my wife comes out of the kitchen. And then we also have Marco Ace. They cannot be replaced. Marco Ace is essential for this team. Otama can be replaced with Corazon or also Bello Betty, but I highly recommend that you don't go for a Free Spirit Crit team unless you pull this Otama. If you pull this Otama, this team is deadly, especially in the early stages of PvP on Global. This will obliterate and get you so many defensive wins as well, because a lot of people will be like, hey, that team doesn't look tanky, and they'll attack you, and then bang, you have a crit coming through from Marco and Ace. Suddenly, your entire team is a lot stronger. You have a crit coming through from Luffy, Zoro. You have a crit coming through from Boa Hancock, and then the attack stat of your team suddenly skyrockets. You're in the 20s attack stat, and then bang, you have a crit coming through from Marco and Ace again on a full power attack, and that's going to deal like 7,000 damage, which can one-shot anybody, really. So yes, Marco and Ace, very, very essential for this team. Otama, very nice as well. Then you have specials which come through as well. Apologies if you can hear the construction in the background. It is what it is. We have got the fighter team, which is what I was talking about earlier, except we don't have Sanji and Luffy on Global. We also do not have the PvP Whitebeard. So for the time being, if you want to be ready for that fighter team, Jinbei, Jack, Otama, three units that cannot really be replaced at all. And then Carrot and Katakuri, I would also say, really shouldn't be looking to be replaced other than with 6+ Sanji. But 6+ Sanji, I don't think is an adequate replacement for any of those units there. But I would say if you can build that team on Global, that's going to be one of the strongest teams that you'll be able to run on Global. Last but not least, we have got a driven team. Now, of course, you can just run a full int team, but that's going to be boring. It's going to be very difficult to build that up because you are not going to have an infinite influx or income of scrolls which are int units. For int units. That's very, very loud. Apologies. But yes, that's why I put in Pika there, I put in Bellamy there, and also Tesoro, because they're all driven units. They will get some, they'll be like pseudo boosted, and they will boost basically all the int units, which are the main units on your team there, and they're easier to max out as well. So this is a discount version of the overpowered int team that you will be able to max out very early on Global. Let's move on to the level 1 teams that you can be building on Global before we look at the JP cheat sheet there. So level 1 teams on Global. I'm going to bring my mic closer here so you don't have to hear the drilling too much. Hopefully that helps. Level 1 teams on global. These are teams that you can run without investing any PvP scrolls, and you should find success with almost all of these teams. Unless, of course, you're going up against any one of these other teams, then you might come into a little bit of a problem. You might come into a bit of a problem there. But overall, my recommendation is going from top to bottom. So the first team I do think is going to be the best team that you can invest in. It is the same as the previous slasher team, except I have got Cracker in there. Cracker will reduce your cooldowns for slasher units. And earlier on in PvP, when nobody really runs any defensive teams, the people who invest in defensive units first that give you defense up and HP up buffs early on are going to be the real winners here. But there's going to be a lot of people who have no idea what they're doing in PvP. They're going to only invest in like attack up and attack up only, and not look at defense up at all or HP up at all. And those people will struggle immensely against this slasher team, because the slasher team is quite well balanced, has a lot of attack up, it has a decent amount of speed, but most importantly it has that Dofi. That Dofi will give you a lot of tankiness, HP up and defense up, which is very, very nice. And as long as your specials go off early, which is what the Cracker is there for, it will deal with any kind of squishy level 1 teams the enemies have as well. The second row, again, it's the fighter team, except it has V1 Snake Man in there. V1 Snake Man at level 1 is very good because a lot of level 1 teams are super squishy and his multipliers are very high. The one downside is, as I mentioned before, if V1 Snake Man only hits one enemy and not a big clump of units, you're probably gonna lose the match because the enemy is likely to have a V1 Snake Man as well. The third row here, we have the units that will become super outdated very, very fast. We've got Douglas Bullet, Snake Man, and V1 Big Mom. Do not be baited into investing into this team, guys. It's not worth it. But this team is also relatively tanky, courtesy of the base stats of all of these units are just very tanky in general, and also Frankie as well. If you do pull the Akainu, by the way, guys, do use him. He's very, very overpowered, so make sure to use that Akainu. The reason why you don't see V1 Whitebeard in any of the starting main rosters here is because at level 1, enemies are not going to have that much HP, and therefore HP cuts are a little bit less effective. HP cuts are obviously going to be very, very good the more HP the enemy has. We got the Free Spirit Crit team, which should work nicely as long as you get Marco and Ace to level 5 passive. You can really, that is my recommendation, honestly. If you have these units, build the Free Spirit Crit team, make Marco and Ace's passive level 5, boost the passive of the Bello Betty there. That's normal Rare Recruit Bello Betty, not Kizuna Rare Recruit Bello Betty. Don't get mixed up there. Normal Rare Recruit Bello Betty. Max her passive because she gives all your allies crit. And then Marco and Ace will have crit early on as well. Otama, max her specials as well, or max her passive ability first. And then bang, you will be able to one-shot basically every team just using normal attacks from Marco and Ace, Luffy, Zoro, Sabo, Koala, etc, etc. And then the bottom two rows are a little bit more yikesy. The Powerhouse team, Hody Jones had a good phase on JP, although he's now pretty much completely irrelevant. Hody Jones will reduce the cooldown of Powerhouse units. Cracker will reduce the cooldown of Powerhouse units. Tesoro will reduce the cooldown of all units. And then you have Big Mom, and you also have V1 Snake Man there, giving you all your damage, really. Again, if you do miss with V1 Snake Man, though, there is a good chance you will lose. But if V1 Snake Man hits a big clump of enemies, at level 1 special, at level 1 teams, that will obliterate almost everyone on the enemy team. So very, very good special. And if that doesn't kill them, then you have V1 Big Mom coming through as well. That's the cooldown reduction team. Do not build that team. Do not invest in that team later on in a few months' time. It's going to be completely redundant and outdated. So keep that in mind. It's only good at level 1. We have got the last but not least striker teams. Fixed damage coming through, very fast cooldowns coming through, lots of tankiness coming through because of that Neko Mamashi. You have the Viola Rebecca, which is a big cooldown reducer, and you also have Tesoro, a big cooldown reducer. And then you have fixed damage coming through from Aokiji and also the V2 Law. But that is pretty much it, guys. Those are the level 1 teams for global. We are going to move on to the Japan side. If you are curious, global players, as to what teams you should be aiming for in the very, very long run, here are the Japan teams. Again, these are the only level 1 teams. Only keep these units at level 1. Some of these units are very good later on as well. So if they do overlap between the PvP global team cheat sheet, then yeah, keep that in mind. That's a very good one as well to use. Again, so much saliva, apologies. But for example, Kizaru, very good at level 1. 6+ Dofi, very good at level 1. V1 Whitebeard, very good at level 1. But they're also all very good at level 10 and level 5, respectively. Level 10 for specials and level 5 for passives. So level 1 teams, big traps here are V1 Snake Man, Big Mom, Douglas Bullet. You don't want to go heavy in them. Cracker as well is okay. You don't want to go too heavy on investing in him. And Hody Jones as well, not really worth investing in at all anymore. So do keep your eyes peeled for those. Last but not least, the JP cheat sheet. So these are what I would dub as the best teams on the Japan servers, player versus player Pirate Rumble. So we've got the full int team there. As you can see, the potential replacements, you've got Pudding in there, you've got PvP Konis, and you have also got 6+ Fujitora in there. But that main 5 are going to be the main crux of units in there. Other good int units that you can run are V2 Shanks, 6+ Sanji, Legend Buggy are other good PvP int units that you can run. Raid Bellamy, Raid Pika, also very good for that team, but I don't have enough space on my infographic. That's the only reason why they're not there. But that's the main roster. That team is super well balanced. If I had that fully maxed out, I would probably use that into almost every single team. Almost every single team except maybe a mono side team, because that's the only problems that they will really face. So very well balanced team, very good damage, very good tankiness, very good sustainability, and I cannot recommend going for that team enough. So do invest your int scrolls into those 5 units. Next up, we have got the team I currently run the most, which is going to be the Rainbow team. We have got V2 Ready, Rainbow Tank. We've got Shanku, Rainbow Tank. We've got another Rainbow Tank / cooldown reducer coming through from Tesoro. And 2 massive heavy hitters in the form of Sanji and Luffy, and also the PvP Whitebeard. Sometimes, depending on the enemy, if I don't feel like I need the cooldown reduction and that I can survive the first 30 seconds. The one drawback of this team is that they're very squishy for the first 30 seconds until Shanks' crew can get his passive up, which activates only after 30 seconds, is I would replace Tesoro with any one of those fixed damage dealers for more damage on my team. Or if the enemy has a powerhouse or driven unit, I would put Law on my team. If they have a lot of tanks, I'll put V1 Akainu or the V3 Katakuri on my teams instead. Moving on, we have got the Slasher team, which I've said is very good on Global. Very good team on JP right now. I've only just started building this team, and I gotta say, even at level 1, that Mihawk is doing work. I have almost all of these units maxed out. I still need to max out 6+ Dofi and the Kizaru and the Mihawk, but once I do max those out, this team might end up becoming my most used team. Very good, especially with that Kaku sub there, and also V3 Law as well. Very nice as well, or rather replacements there. And then we have got the other pseudo-ish Rainbow team. It's more like a striker team with a V2 Rayleigh to boost up everyone's HP. So V2 Rayleigh, as I mentioned already, is a top tier universal Rainbow tank, which is very nice. We've got Tesoro for cooldown reduction, Nekomamushi for tankiness for strikers, and then we have got a massive fixed damage dealer in Aokiji with PvP Whitebeard. We all know PvP Whitebeard is overpowered. Not really much replacements there other than Viola and Rebecca over Tesoro, or Viola and Rebecca over Nekomamushi. And then instead of the Kuzan or the PvP Whitebeard, you can use V2 6+ Law. Team number 5, Shooters. I know he's not on Japan yet, guys, but when he comes to Japan, this team is going to be so broken with the Strength Akainu. The V3 Akainu Legend. Very overpowered team. I'm sure that they are going to exceed. I don't have any of these units except for 6+ Kizaru powered up, but I may have to start investing in them, even though I hate Frankie so much. I may have to start investing in them because I do want to run that team. It looks like a very exciting team to run. And that Strength Usopp there is also amazing for a free-to-play unit. Really powerful for a free-to-play unit. Level 6 speed and level 6 attack up for shooter units. Free-to-play unit, by the way. Can't believe it, and he's so easy to obtain as well. Unbelievable. And that Capone, very good 6+ for PvP to give your team a bit more tankiness. You can use him to replace any one of those damage dealers instead as well. And last but not least, the team I want to build, but I haven't built yet, because one, I don't want to invest into Jack until I have fully maxed out my Jinbei, and Jinbei is, you know, second priority to all the int units in the first row there. And then I also don't have Otama either, so if I did have Otama, I would consider running this team as my primary team. But unfortunately, I do not have Otama. I don't want to max Jack right now because I need to save strength scrolls for Otama, who I don't have, and also I want to save int scrolls for the major int team at the front row there. And you got potential replacements for the 2 DPS units there. The 3 units at the front cannot be replaced by either of those DPS units. But there you have it, guys. That is the full video. I apologize, it's been relatively long. I think it's over 1 hour long. If it is over 1 hour long, I apologize, but PvP is such a massive game mode. It gives you so many good rewards. I will have another massive in-depth global video for PvP coming soon to my channel on the 30th of September. So please do look out for that. It's a massive video. I work super hard on it as well. So hopefully it will be entertaining for you guys. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Let's end off with the stipulations once again. All the relevant information is there. If you do want to have these screenshots permanently, you can just screenshot them yourselves, or I will be tweeting them out on Twitter and Instagram as well, posting them to Instagram as well. The links of which are down there right beneath the camera and also in the description as well. So hit me up on Twitter at AsianGuyStream. I do have a new Twitter account. My old one was at Atsu, but now it's AsianGuyStream. I wanted to make sure my brand was very clear. So AsianGuyStream is my new Twitter account. If you have any questions, feel free to tweet them to me, and I will be regularly tweeting out basically useful information, or hopefully useful information, on PvP in the upcoming days, as well as maybe some sneak preview of some of my pulls as well. If you miss them on Twitch and I don't upload them to YouTube, I'll be uploading them to Twitter instead. So yes, please do follow me on Twitter. Link is in the description down below. And thank you very much for watching, guys. Thank you very much for listening, and hopefully this video will take you to the top of PvP. And have a wonderful day. Remember to hashtag Danke Yoshi with a bellissimo, and have a wonderful day. Bye bye.